Well, first, what it means to be a Wiccan is to be somebody who believes that the divine manifests as and through all of the natural world. And so we relate to the divine through the turning of the seasons, the cycles of the moon, through ceremonies that connect us with the earth, and see the earth as the center of balance that we can relate to. To be a Wiccan in the modern world is to move from being a religion that operated entirely in secret because we were persecuted and had to meet behind closed doors and in the dark, to suddenly being thrust in the public view, and sort of changing our sense of self from being inward looking and focused primarily on self-preservation to being outward looking and now taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves to put our principles into action in the world with other faith traditions. Well, actually, strangely enough, there's a huge overlap between people involved in science and computers and people involved in Wicca. And some of the earliest large websites that devoted to religious resources were run by Wiccans. So we're very tech savvy, lots of people have computers, websites are up, and as an underground movement sort of coming into public awareness, the web has been, if you'll excuse the phrase, a godsend to allow us to connect with each other. The biggest change it's worked on us is when we were a more secretive religion, it meant that the only way you could get involved was to meet someone and develop a personal relationship. And so only people who were really dedicated and spent time could finally meet someone and make their way in. Now with the websites up, anyone can go online and find something about Wicca online and now say, hey, I'm a Wiccan. And so that changes our sense of identity, because it used to be a much more tight-knit, almost family or tribal type group, and now it's becoming the kind of faith tradition where anyone who feels moved to do so can just affiliate. And that changes our sense of self, of who we are. Well, the easiest things are probably when we explain that Wicca is basically based in the indigenous religions of Europe. And so you can think of something like Shinto or Native American, but with a European Mediterranean cultural setting, and have a pretty good idea of who we are. Another thing is that we really focus on the immanence of the divine, that the divine is manifest here, right now, in the wind, the trees, the sea, that chair, you, me, and that if we take that idea seriously, we have to treat all things, living and unliving around us, with respect. But that idea of immanence is one that's found in almost every faith tradition. Some emphasize it, some focus more on transcendence, but the fact that that is present in almost every faith tradition is an immediate bridge that allows people to understand us and relate to us. The hardest thing, I think, is that we are still closer to those indigenous roots in our practices than a lot of the mainstream, if I can use the word, civilized religions. We believe in meeting outdoors, out in nature. We believe many of us will meet skyclad, which is naked, if the opportunity arises, to be closer to nature. Some don't, some work robed. It's always an individual choice. So many of our ceremonies and practices are more directly related to the natural world that they seem foreign to especially Abrahamic religious traditions. Also, sometimes people have a hard time grasping the idea that we focus on developing a personal relationship with the divine, and while we may have inherited written teachings, we don't have a scripture. And a lot of people think that that means you don't have rules, you don't have something forcing you to behave properly, and think that it means that anything goes. And it's hard sometimes for them to grasp the idea that if you're really focusing on a personal relationship with the divine, that divine guidance will guide you to proper behavior. And you don't need to rely on external rules to be virtuous people. Well, most witches practice magic in some form or other. It's the craft part of witchcraft. And so a lot of what we do in magical rituals is create in microcosm, in a small form, what you want to see happen on the larger scale. And every time I come to a Parliament of the World's Religions, or indeed any major religious interfaith gathering, you see people from all over the world, deeply committed to their own faith traditions, coming together and forming a community where they not only get along, but they really enjoy sitting down and talking with each other. And right here, right now, we see a microcosm of what's possible for the entire world to be. I sometimes say, come see what the world can be. Come to an interfaith conference. So to me, this is a magical act. We're all together of us performing a spell here to improve the world.